Good morning, everyone. Merry Christmas. I just want to pop on here as I'm taking a little break over the holidays, but still recording extremely hard. I just want to surprise you all with a fun little bonus episode. This is a guest lecture that I did at Fraser University back in October that I released on my Patreon, but I wanted to share it out here publicly with y'all so you guys can enjoy, take a minute and a moment to yourselves, and thank you all for listening over the past few years. Please enjoy it, and I'll see you all in the new year for a brand new episode. Happy holidays!
I'm really going to do my best again to not talk too much and hand it over to Steph, who is so incredibly capable, and enjoy the speak. So Steph, meet the class.
Hello, class. It's so lovely to meet you all. I'm so excited to chat with you guys over the next hour and a bit. For some fun facts, I was actually an SFU alumni as well in criminology too, so it's really cool for this to kind of come full circle and for me to share my experience, my knowledge, and hopefully give you some insight and some takeaways for you to kind of, think a bit more critically when it comes to sex work, sex workers, how are you viewing that, and so on. So I'd like to introduce myself. I'll probably just pop on my presentation here. It's a really loose presentation, but I will go ahead and see if that can work here. We'll do the share button and we'll try to go here. Sorry, bear with me. And then we will go ahead and view. Oh, nope. Hang on one second. The Zoom thing is just in the way. Let's do this. View. Fit to window. No, we want to do slideshow. It's been a day. Play from start. Here we go. I'd love to just talk through everything. Anyways, dissecting sex work, human rights and labor issue, because it is a human rights issue. It is a labor issue as well. I just want to, introduce you all to myself, which is really weird, but also funny. My name is Steph Sia. I am a podcast host of the award-nominated Strip by Sia podcast, which is all about destigmatizing sex work. And I started that show about 5.5 years ago now, which is really wild to me. And that was an outcome because I've been working in the industry for a bit. I've been in the industry for over a decade. I think I'm going on 11 years now in the industry of various capacities. And I really wanted to, as I mentioned before, attempt to try to destigmatize the industry, bring a different perspective that you're not always hearing from in terms of like the media or stereotypes or like weird jokes that are out there. I just really wanted to give a really in-depth approach and perspective to what sex workers go through, what our experiences are, our challenges. And I did that and do that by bringing different guests onto the show every single week. So it started off kind of just bringing on my friends and colleagues in the industry here locally. And then kind of when COVID happened, then it forced me to kind of branch out in a global way, because I was like, well, now everything's on Zoom and everything is on like virtual. So that really enabled me to cross borders in a certain way, and also just gain the perspective of what other countries are doing in regards to sex work, how sex workers are being treated in different countries and stuff too, outside North American perspective. But again, really trying to gain a holistic and transparent approach to how sex work is treated in basically all around the world. So a little bit about myself. That was just about the show, but a little about myself. As you know, I'm an SFU alumni. Again, criminology grad, gender studies minor, criminology major. And I did not know I would be back here talking to future classes in criminology to talk about my experience in sex work. But as I mentioned, I've been in the industry for a little while. I started off as a sugar baby. More stories on that later on. Kind of branched off into stripping, content creation, and over the past 5 years, doing camming as well. And yeah, it's been a wild journey. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned about how to run businesses. It's just been a really interesting ride, and I'm hoping that again you all have a different. You come into the class with an expectation or with an assumption, and hopefully you will leave the class with a better understanding of our work. So in addition to that, because sex workers are very multifaceted, we're not just our label of I am a sex worker or I am a stripper. I also do other things as well. So I have like some vanilla/civilian work as well. So I do marketing digitally. I work from home. I'm an executive director of a charity. I sit in on a couple boards here in Vancouver, which help benefit sex workers. I'm a YouTuber. I work at a hotel. Like, I do a lot of things. So it's a lot of gig economy work, but the hustle is real. And, you know, there's so much crossover with sex work too when it comes to self-employment and independent contracting and whatnot. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. So that's just like a little snapshot view of who I am. And it's so nice to meet you all. And once again, thank you again, Tamara, for inviting me back again to speak to the class. Every class is different, so I'm really excited to get to know you all. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. I'm going to try to do my best to try to answer questions as I go. We'll see. If not, I will just maybe try to tackle them all at the very end of, I was going to say the end of the show, the end of the class today. Okay, so I did talk about the podcast origins, really stemming in terms of sex work as valid work. So many times, there's so much crossover with like hospitality jobs in terms of like, oh, when are you going to get a real job? And for example, I also had like maybe a former friend comment, not to me, but someone I knew as well, but mentioning like, oh, how can she plan to be a mother if she's working in sex work? So interesting comments like that, which are obviously very hurtful, not great, but this is just like a really small snapshot of, you know, how like the stigma that we go through. And stigma is going to be a real big piece and theme throughout the talk today, because with stigma, it affects everything. It affects how you view the work. It affects how you're being treated. And it's very dangerous as well. So yes, as mentioned, again, talking about the podcast, I did it to humanize the work of sex workers, to educate folks, not just people in our industry, but also folks like yourselves who may not be anywhere close to our industry, but hopefully would have an open mind to hear about what it's actually like to be in this work. So that's a little bit that. I always like to ask this question at the top of class, because I'm always curious to hear what definitions or what people might think sex work is. So I'd love to hear, like, what is your definition of sex work? And if you want to pop into the chat, that's totally fine. If you're tired, I get it. It's feels like a Monday today. And I understand this is a nighttime class too, so thank you for joining in today. But if we're not feeling super engaging, that's totally fine. over the years, I feel like my definition has kind of shaped and been reshaped and morphed and has transformed over the years as I have grown more and more within the industry. So this is only my definition. You can have a different definition, and I'm sure Tamara has taught you a specific definition of what sex work might be as well. But let me see here. So yes, this is my own personal definition, but it's a type of centralized service in exchange for monetary value, affluence, status, or power. And the reason I say that because, as I have worked in many different areas and corners of sex work. It's not just all about sex. Yes, of course, there's a huge aspect of that, but some points are not. It's not just the exchange of sex, the actual act for money. It can be in exchange for a vacation, or I'm gonna get a promotion, or connections and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I've landed with that, because like even during my experience as a sugar baby, being in touch with all these affluential men and stuff with like promises, I'll get you a job in my company, or I'll do this and that for you. Like that can still be a power exchange as well. And also and you are exchanging a service in that case, my time, whether it's sex and whatnot. It can really just depend and vary. So that's kind of where I have landed with that. But yeah, like some questions I'd like to put out here in terms of like, when it comes to sex work, who do you consider as sex workers? Because I feel maybe sometimes people might have a certain image or a certain look of what they might think a sex worker is. And even like what they do. An example of this is, trying to have conversations with my mother in terms of trying to get her to understand the advocacy work that I do, why it's important, and also to challenge her way of thinking as well. And she had a very like black and white view when it came to sex work and the topic, and had only understood sex work as, okay, it's going to be a person that's having sex for money. And that was the only understanding that she had. Still a work in progress with my mom. But I mean, that's just an example of like, it can mean a lot of different things to different people, and it can be a friend of yours, it could be a mother, it can be, a partner, it can be so many different people, so many different genders as well that participate in sex work. So I just want to ensure that we're understanding that as well. So I also like to talk about language here as well. So in terms of, asking how someone would like to be addressed, if I'm going to use a parallel, it's like, how it's very commonplace now to ask, what are your preferred pronouns? It's like, I would like to use that in a similar vein when you're speaking to sex workers, or if that is someone that has had sex work experience. I always like to ask, like, how do you want to be referred to, because it is important, and there can be a lot of weight when it comes to language. And I think it's really important that you're using language, obviously not in a weaponizing way, but with like an informed approach. So some ideas and some examples that I've put here are just things that I have quickly come to mind. So like strippers versus exotic dancers versus dancer. There's so many different people have so many different preferences on how they prefer to be called. Like for myself, I just prefer the word dancer. I don't mind using the term stripper. I don't particularly like the word exotic because it fetishizes Asian women. So there's just so many different ways you can go about that. And there are a few other examples there as demonstrated. So yeah, I've changed the slide. This is a new slide. So new slide, but not. But just to give you a bit more backstory in terms of, how I got into sex work, why I chose sex work. A lot of people I feel like really enjoy or are curious about hearing the why. So basically back in 2013, I had come out of this big mess of a relationship. You know, a lot of us do in our 20s. And it affected me a lot. It affected my confidence. It affected my self-esteem. And I remember an old roommate of mine mentioning, oh, well, since you're just going on all these Tinder dates for free, like, why don't you sign up for a seeking arrangement and, you know, get paid to go on dates? And I thought, you know, okay, I'm just graduated university like the year prior. I'm still trying to get a quote unquote real job. And I was like, okay, well, you know, that sounds like a really great business opportunity. I'm going to give it a try. Not really knowing what seeking arrangement was, what it was used for, and really just going in so green and naive. In terms of like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna go on some paid dinner dates, which can obviously happen. Platonic arrangements are definitely a thing for sure. But you know, the overarching like elephant in the room is like, okay, there's a lot of men on this website expecting certain things, and if you're not familiar with what seeking arrangement is, it's like almost like an online dating service which pairs usually young women, sometimes very, very young students, with usually older, affluential men. So, again, myself going into this, not really understanding what this was, yeah, it was very, very naive going into it. I also had specific attitudes that were very different back then in terms of like, I'm not considering this as work. Like I'm pretending this is a business meeting because I had like a cupcake business back then. I'm like, maybe I'll get an investor, and like all these really whimsical and like dreamy kind of aspirations. And yeah, I quickly learned that that was not what the bulk of the website was for. And, you know, maybe there was a certain denial during that time when I was a sugar baby. I was doing that for maybe about 3 years, and, you know, learned a lot about myself in terms of like, wow, money can be very tempting and I can be easily swayed if someone is waving an extra $500 or $1,000 in my face. Like maybe those boundaries can waver a little bit because I didn't know what my boundaries were. I didn't know what boundaries are. I was just like, okay, it can't be that bad. Like, you know, what am I really compromising here? I'm like, it's going to be so quick. Like, we just have to spend like X amount of time with this person to get this much money. Like, for me, it was just the money was the goal. So that was a really interesting time because, again, I wasn't really treating it as work. I was just really treating it as, okay, I want to go to all these restaurants that I've been wanting to go to for a while, or I've been, you know, again, trying to find investors for my business and stuff like that. But I had a very different approach and attitude when it came to sex work at the time. Around my exit of, you know, being a sugar baby, I started getting into stripping. I fell into that. Not really fell into that. I was doing pole dancing competitively, and I was like, oh, well, I already have the skills, so I might as well, you know, add another layer, or like maybe take off another layer, and try that because I already had the chops for it. So I started doing that, and again, really again, starting to strengthen my boundaries even more with that corner of the industry. And then, of course, moving on to online work. So I'm sure you've all heard of OnlyFans or like other paid subscription websites, and how that has shifted in sex work a lot too, and has changed sex work a lot as well. But I think it was probably around like, yeah, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, really starting to challenge my own way of thinking when it came to, okay, like I actually want to do this. Like I think that point really came kind of a year into stripping. This was back in maybe 2016, 17. I've been kind of moonlighting as a stripper. When I say moonlighting, it's because I was working in an office. In the day, I was kind of doing some like amateur nights at the Penthouse and amateur nights at Brandy's and all the amateur nights, because I didn't really want to fully dive in with both of my feet and carry this weight and carry this stigma. So But it came to a point one day I was like, I really don't care what people think, and I really want to do this because it's so much fun and I get so much joy from performing and, lighting up the room, and just feeding off the energy. Like there's something about, live performance that I just absolutely love. And, yeah, taking off the clothes was another point of it too, but it really didn't matter to me. For what mattered to me was that I was really happy and really wanted to be open about doing this and being true to myself. So that was kind of where things started to pivot a little bit. And I really started to question how I was thinking about sex work before, and how my views started to kind of shift and change at that moment, and really started to treat it as like, oh, this really is a business. Oh, I should really maybe start treating it as such, and not just kind of pick a new price to, sell my clips at and stuff like that. Or, I should really start hustling and trying to sell more dances and stuff too. So that's kind of where that shift started to begin. And that's also where like my understanding of like, okay, this really is a legitimized profession. And there's so many people doing this and so many people choosing to do this, that I should really think about this a lot more and take it more seriously. So from there on, I started to go into other forms of the work. I've been enjoying it ever since. Of course, there are aspects of the work that I don't enjoy, but I feel that comes with any career or job that you might do. Like, for example, when I worked in an office, there were certain things that I didn't care to do. I wasn't passionate about. Like, I was an office manager back at the time, and it was like I didn't really want to be like cleaning the fridge and like, whose old lunch is this? It's been here for like 2 weeks. Like just stuff like that I didn't really care too much for. But also like that also goes with aspects of my jobs now, like I don't exactly enjoy when people are trying to take advantage of me and trying to manipulate me, and I like am just kind of being towing along with that. I don't enjoy people trying to push my boundaries and not respecting that. Like there's, or just I guess the pull of having to be available 24/7 when you're an online sex worker. So there's, of course, highs and lows when it comes to any kind of profession, whether you're in sex work or not. But I mean, over this past decade, I've definitely learned a lot about myself. I mentioned, what my boundaries were, really recognizing the humanizing aspect of sex workers, the vast majority, not vast, I guess, variation and diversity that is in our industry has been just amazing to see and be a part of, and also just how resilient this community is as well. So I've learned a lot of really great things, both personally and professionally when it comes to the work, and have been very thankful to have really dipped my toes in this. More than dipping my toes, I'm kind of like waist deep for sure. Oh no, I'm like fully in. So so yeah, I hope I'm not talking too fast. I tend to kind of talk a lot as well. So please, if you have any questions, just pop them into the chat. I don't even know if I can see the chat right now, but that's okay. We'll get to those questions whenever they come. So yeah, I always love to ask this question as well. I've told you my story in terms of why I chose sex work. In the beginning, it was like a lot about money and freedom and flexibility. But what are some of your assumptions, or why do you think so many people choose sex work, and why has this been around forever since the beginning of time? I'm curious if you want to pop in your submissions. Oh, I do see something. Okay, I can access the chat. Let's see. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Sydney. Yes, you have opportunity to be self-employed. Money. Yes, it's definitely a great motivator. That is definitely, I'm with you on that one. Any other takers? Friends of mine have sought it out for sexual empowerment and reclaiming their bodies. That's also a great reason as well. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Grayson. And I'm sure there's many other things and reasons that you can think of as well. But if you're not feeling like chatting, that's totally fine. I'm going to move on. But yeah, negative stereotypes aside, I'm just going to close that chat. Accessibility. It's one of those one of those professions where you don't need a degree, you don't need any kind of certification or licensing or education to do it. It's fairly accessible for a lot of people, and you don't need extensive training on it. So that's definitely a reason. Money, as you guys have mentioned as well in the chat, obviously this can be a really great profession that can, reward you with potentially a lot of money in shorter amount of time compared to other jobs or traditional jobs that are out there. Flexibility, this is definitely a reason myself that I fully enjoy in terms of being able to have the choice of when I want to work. Also the privilege of having to have that choice of when I want to work, how often I want to work, and stuff like that. And also, if people I tend to work from home a lot of times nowadays. That's kind of where I'm going with that. But some people obviously do this as survival work too, for those many reasons, as you mentioned above. We can't ignore that there are many workers out there that have to absolutely do this work because of all the reasons: accessibility, money, and flexibility, to enable for them to survive in, say, this city or elsewhere as well. So those are just a few reasons. They're bigger, very umbrella terms there too, but I think that really encapsulates why people choose to be in this line of work. And I also like to kind of do this slide in the middle of the presentation because there's an assumption that the sex work is easy. But sex work is work, and this is a slogan you probably hear of often, but it really is true. Sex work is not easy. There's a lot of stuff that comes to play when you are choosing to do this work. As you mentioned, the stigma is a big piece there. Having people judge you for the type of work that you do, having employers not hire you because of said experience in the work, the amount of time that that I spend in the back end doing things for my website, or the amount of time that I am waiting in my cam room, waiting for people to show up, talking into the abyss, into the black of my laptop. Same thing to do with stripping as well. The amount of times that you're it's a Tuesday night, we're expected to sell dances. To who? There's nobody in the club. There are more dancers than patrons. So, the assumption of sex work is easy, I think, is, wild to me and wildly inaccurate, just because people think it is easy. Oh, I'm just going to take off my clothes, or I'm just going to spread my legs and get paid for what I do. There's so much emotional labor that goes on in this type of work too, that goes on behind the scenes. It's also very isolating work as well, especially for myself that works primarily at home, online, from my phone. Sometimes folks are unable to share this line of work and have to be concealed, have to do this anonymously, have to be face in, and not being able to celebrate big moments or terrible moments when you get assaulted on the job. It can be very encroaching and debilitating when you're met with those kinds of situations. So there's a lot of work that has to be done with sex work. And definitely the opposite of it being easy work. I thought I did see something go on in the chat, and then now I lost the screen, but I will get back to you when that chat box pops up again. The hierarchy. Yes.
There's one question in the chat.
Oh, yes. Can you read it out? I don't even know where the... Thank you. The
question is, how do you manage work-life balance when you're not at work? As you said, you often have to be available online. So.
Yeah, that is something I am continually trying to practice and be better at, but I've been doing really good, and this year has been really great for myself. So because I'm primarily an online creator, I set specific hours for myself where I'm going to be available for work. And I usually try to stop my work at a quote unquote normal business time or business hour. So I try to stop all online work by like 5 or 6 p.m. at night. That I don't, I'm really trying hard to not bring my laptop on vacation. I've been very good at doing that lately, but then now I'm on the apps. So then like I'm always on the apps and I have to update those. So, but also like just with time management and just trying to break things into chunks in terms of like, okay, I'm going to schedule all my things for this week or when I'm going to be away so I don't have to be online as much, or maybe I will just check in once a day. And I also like to just communicate to my fans and followers, be like, hey, I'm going on vacation. Might take me like a day or two to respond, and hopefully like I think my fans are great in order in terms of like, oh yeah, enjoy your vacation, or I'll get back to you. I hope you're gonna be taking some photos on vacation to share with us later and stuff like that. So, really trying to be respectful of my time with that, and really recognizing when I'm really tired and not in the mood, because those are not usually good days that I should be working. I'm really trying to get out of the habit of like, oh my gosh, like the FOMO-ness of it all. Like I can be making money right now, but recognizing myself that, okay, actually you need to take a nap right now, or you actually just need to disconnect and shut off and go outside and touch grass. So I'm still working on that, but that's kind of where I'm at in terms of like balancing the work. Also, I'm a Libra too, so I'm pretty good at balancing things as much as I can. Those can be extreme at some points though, but work hard, play hard. Thank you for that question, by the way. Thank you. This slide, I feel students are always very interested in, and I think it's interesting as well. We're talking about the hierarchy. This is a really interesting concept, very similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you studied psychology, you would have, as you probably went over that in Psych 102 or 100 back in the day. But yes, this is like a triangle, inverted triangle, well, no, regular triangle. But there are different variations of the hierarchy depending on what literature you're reading. But this is kind of one that I had kind of made myself, but I think other people also follow this one as well. So it's an idea, I don't know, internalized hatred towards other sex workers. That's one way of looking at it. It's not, I don't know, envy, jealousy, competition, all those unhealthy things all into one. But for example, this one that I'm displaying here goes from like non-contact work. I'm behind a screen. I don't have to engage in person with people. I am safe. That is at the top. Then we go down to strippers, which, there is some in-person contact, but, I'm not having sex with my clients. Same with dominatrices. Then there's sugar babies and like indoor workers. And then we go to streetwalkers. I think a really cool observation, actually, at Tamara in your last class, one of our students mentioned like, oh, this is also, also going from, lighter colored, or maybe the skin color of folks going down to, people that would be more marginalized. So, obviously persons of color, having to do outdoor work, outdoor commercial sex work. Those are sometimes looked down upon as, okay, well, you're dirty and, we're better than you because we don't have to engage in that kind of work. Like this whole thinking of the hierarchy is actually quite dangerous to our community. And unfortunately, it's perspectives that are taken from within our community. I still hear of people, I'm not affiliated with them, but you see it on X or Twitter or Reddit, making comments about, well, I don't do this and I don't have to have sex with this person. But it really comes from a place of privilege, entitlement, all those things. And it really does a lot of damage because, the last thing we want is more judgment on our work. And at the end of the day, we're all doing sex work in some capacity, and we don't really need that judgment from inside our community. It makes me so upset to hear this. And it's, yeah, very, very, very disappointing that this still goes on in so many circles right now. Like, I'm seeing a lot of like fandom creators using rhetoric like this and really spewing out this kind of negativity. That's kind of what I'm seeing currently. Of course, it shifts around the industry as well, but I want to bring that to your attention because I think it's something that is so damaging to the community.
Hey, Steph, you
Hey.
mentioned the term FinDom, which I'm not sure
Oh,
if everybody know what that
yes,
is.
of course. Yeah, financial dominatrix or financial domination. Sorry. So this is the idea of, you'd usually have like a sub that would pay a tribute to you to gain access to you, to talk to you. There are many different kinds of financial dominatrixes and financial domination, depending on what spectrum you're at and how much you can afford to spend. So it's a really interesting concept. These folks, are aroused by getting their wallets drained, spending money. Some people like getting blackmailed. Some people want to see their bank account at zero. It's really interesting and really popular right now. A lot of folks are getting into that. Lots of younger baby dominatrices are getting into this right now, but also like this isn't sex work, like refusing and the denial, and it's yeah, I have thoughts and feelings about that because yeah, it's a huge thing, popularized by TikTok, popularized by all the online social media right now, and another showcase of like sensationalizing how easy it is to get into this line of work and how easy the money is. So yes, thanks for slowing me down there, because even like when I'm doing this, I forget to define things. But yes, in case people are unaware, and of course, if there's any term that you're like, what does that acronym mean? Please just slow me down. I tend to talk fast, but also just trying to respect the time as well. Oh yeah, we're still doing okay. So yeah, also talking about isms, injustices, intersectionalities. So I kind of briefly went over this, just touched on it earlier, but sex workers are a highly marginalized group of people. You're highly stigmatized, our work is stigmatized. But of course, when you add different layers into that, there is even more marginalization happening here. So within this group, within sex work, of course, there can be a risk of increased violence for those who are part of the LGBTQ community. If you are part of the disabled community, if you're a person of color, if you're neurodivergent, if you're a migrant or immigrant worker, there's so many more obstacles and so many more challenges that you are met with. And usually if you're part of these groups, yes, you will probably see an increased form of violence in your work areas. Oh my gosh, sorry. Is that your cat? Amazing. Sorry, I was like, what is going on over there? But yes, just want to put attention to that as well. For example, talking about myself, I identify as a Filipino Chinese woman. And a sex worker. So with that comes along a fetishization. I'm succumbed with numerous race play requests, and race play is, people that may be aroused by certain racial situations. I don't want to go too much into that, but yes, it can be for me, for myself personally. I believe it really perpetuates racism and racial stereotypes. But yeah, going on that fetishization piece, people making assumptions about like, oh, you're Filipino, so you must be so hardworking. And I had a friend, I dated someone who was in the Philippines, and I was like, what does that have to do with me? But just going on these the stereotypes that come with this, it can be really uncomfortable. I don't like to entertain comments like that because it's a little bit disturbing to myself, and a person that has been born and raised here, but also just like with my ancestors and stuff too, that have also had to go through that with colonization. The roots run deep with that. So I just really want to bring that up too, in terms of like, folks being more prone to uncomfortable, violent situations when you're adding these layers on, because they can be all related in a way as well when it comes to sex work. We were talking about the topic of labor, this being a labor issue. So yes, I've put a lot of bullet points here in terms of like, we can be subjected to exploitation, unfair treatment. I mentioned violence earlier as well. At the top of the talk here, I did mention about, the challenges it can that independent contracting can be faced with. This is definitely a thing. For example, with my work as a stripper, it's a lot of blurring of the lines, like, them trying to, like, the strip clubs trying to dictate, when we have to be at the club, what time is their check-in time. But I was like, the reason I do this job is so I can have flexibility and so I can get to the club when I want to get to the club. My show's at 10:10. Why do I have to be here at 8 o'clock when no one's at the club? So it's a lot of situations like that. For example, I am supposed to have a gig tonight at 9 p.m. for a private party. I'm waiting all day for my agent to send me more information. I've only have the address of the guy. I don't know what the context of the party is. So potentially going into unsafe situations, not getting enough information, stuff like that, which is not great and probably wouldn't fly in a quote unquote normal job. We're talking about different, unregulated pay cuts, as we know, potential violence from clients, employers and pimps. Censorship is a big one, especially that's so current right now too. My original podcast account on Instagram got suspended and deleted at X amount of thousands of followers. That was great. But then it's just like, okay, now I have to start from scratch. But that's huge when, say if that was like my creator account, then now that's being suspended. And now I have to start from scratch. For example, actually this summer, one of my camming accounts was suspended as well because I had participated, I was kind of baited into the situation by a client to engage in conduct that was against their terms and services. But that was the whole thing, and I'm just like, what am I going to do about money now? I was like relying on this to pay for this bill and stuff like that. So it can be very, very stressful situations, which is always so devastating when when it happens to folks, and it happens so often in our industry as well. It's like the running joke is like, are you even a sex worker if you didn't have one of your accounts banned or deleted or suspended? Like, we laugh about it, but it's also like very, very sad and really hard to just try to build that up again from scratch. As I mentioned, here's a couple more things. Stolen content, another thing, like bank accounts getting shut down as well. So these really make it hard for us to operate and find motivation to stay in this industry and stay driven and focused. We're also talking about safety as well, having to, have a stage name, trying to conceal your identity. If we can conduct background checks, if we're doing in-person work, that's great. The sharing of blacklists within our community to keep our community members safe. As I mentioned earlier, setting boundaries for yourself, all this stuff, it comes along with being in the industry that, people on the outside might not be aware of and, think that the work is easy. Akin to my earlier slides. So that, some current issues. This is a new slide that I added in as well. So a couple things that have come up to mind this year as, the dangers or the challenges of using facial recognition software. For an example, an article I read recently. Are you guys familiar with those Meta Ray-Ban sunglasses with the camera? there's like a little camera in these sunglasses. But anyways, there was an article that I read of those being able to detect and dox sex workers because they can find out your name, your address, or what city you're living in, and that being a threat to, say, I go to adult industry conventions, if a lot of them fans go to as well, and if they're wearing these type of glasses, then they can gain access to information from their favorite porn stars and stuff and use that information to blackmail and dox them. And if you don't know what doxing is say like Kimchi is my stage name, Steph C is my real name. I'm using an alias to protect myself from stalkers, from, you know, bad actors out there, if I didn't want like part of my family to know. But using that information to tell people and to threaten family members, or, you know, extort money out of, blackmail. There's so many different reasons. But doxing is definitely, unfortunately, a thing that happens again in our industry. I don't want to say commonly, but unfortunately, I've just heard so many stories with my own personal friends that has happened to them. So that's kind of a new thing that I've been seeing. And also just like, yeah, there's a lot I can go more into that too. But we're running out of time too. We were also talking about using artificial intelligence to scour escort ads for trafficking victims. I see something in the chat. Did I miss something in the chat? No, I didn't. Or maybe I did. Maybe it didn't. Something just popped up, but I'm just seeing the old message. Anyways, we'll come back if there's more questions there as well. But then, yes, how are we using artificial intelligence in a safe way? Because how are you even using artificial intelligence to see what a trafficking victim looks like? What does a trafficking victim look like? What does that mean? Like, is it based on the keywords that they have in their ads? Is it a certain look that looks like someone who's trafficked? Those are, I know that, yes, some people, SFU, were working on that recently, that Tamara knows a lot of information on, which is fascinating, but also very scary as well. And this is another point here. More and more sex workers getting detained at border crossings, the confiscation of phones, and also just the questioning and not being able to go into like the United States, for example. Just a lot of steps that we have to go into to even like travel is a thing, you know, having to leave our WhatsApp groups and our work groups. Some people don't even want to bring a phone with them. They have like a completely separate phone for them to be safe. Raids are still continuing in massage parlors here in Richmond. So, and that was disappointing too. There was a whole fight against that. But unfortunately, the bylaw is still allowing for police officers to raid massage parlors and continue to scare workers that are in those areas, which are safer than going into private homes and being forced to work all day. And in the States, I'm sure you've heard of Project 2025, wanting to criminalize pornography. And, you know, if you own pornography, then you can also be criminalized. I'm not sure what is going to happen out of that. But that is a potentially scary thing for our queer folks and people in the LGBTQIA community, but also affects our work as sex workers as well. So those are just a handful of things that I just thought of that you should be thinking about as well. I know we need to quickly talk about decrim. I'm like looking at the clock if you're wondering why are you looking upstairs. Decrim, legalization, Nordic model. So I have some quick little 1-line or 2-line sentences here that would hopefully summarize a little bit in terms of like, you know, what sex workers want. And I kind of put this decriminalization at the top because for the most part, and for folks and for advocacy groups, we are fighting for decriminalization, which involves removal of criminal provisions of sex work, against sex work, and hopefully eliminate some laws that prohibit sex work, and hopefully, you know, legitimize our profession as well, and we can hopefully get benefits and be treated as such, and no one will blink an eye when you say, oh, I'm a sex worker. It'll just be a normal thing one day, maybe in our lifetime. I'm not sure. Legalization. This is an example of, say, like in the state of Nevada, not in all counties, but the regulation of sex work through laws and when it can happen, where it may take place. There's a lot of legalized brothels that are around Nevada, and there's certain laws and stipulations that dictate how that can work and operate. And some folks actually really enjoy that. That is, especially in the states where sex work is criminalized, that is a good option for them. Coming back to Canada here, and also in parts in Europe as well. We have the Nordic model. I've also been told maybe we shouldn't be using the term Nordic model too. And now I'm trying to think of another term, a Swedish model, but maybe we shouldn't be called it Swedish model as well.
The end demand model.
Yes, we should.
They also have co-opted the word equality and are calling it the equality model.
Oh, that's new to me.
That's new.
That's new. That's rich. Yeah. I mean, end demand model. Yeah, I think it's probably what I will be changing that to. But decriminalizes selling sex, but makes it illegal to buy sexual services. But why this is problematic it's because it pushes the work underground, which makes it harder for sex workers to access health services and legal protections. Can put sex workers in more vicarious and violent working situations, which is really scary. And this is what we currently have in Canada for the past decade now. Yeah, 2014. I know. Where has time gone? Honestly, it boggles my mind it has been challenged, but unfortunately, it's still in effect to this day. And oh yeah, we're almost done. Sorry, folks. And in terms of like legalities, we'll quickly go over this. I'm sure Tamara's going to go over this in class as well if she hasn't already. But talking about the Nordic model, Bill C-36, that was enacted in 2014 under the Conservative government. Yes, we like to talk about the PCPA, which is the Protection of Communities Exploited Act. And actually, Tamara was on the podcast and did a really great talk on this, talking about how this is problematic and how who does it actually protect. They claim it's going to be safer for sex workers, but as I mentioned earlier with the previous slide in regards to the Nordic model, it's actually been proven otherwise. And I know that there has been extensive research that has been done to show that how ineffective this model really is. I don't have quite enough time to go into that, but in terms of our lovely neighbors down south, Foster is also, I don't want to say an equivalent, but equally bad in terms of, the conflating consenting adults with exploited persons. And they think that everyone is being human trafficked. No one actually would have the choice to choose. Why would anyone want to choose this line of work? So both models are not great. Those are both currently in place here in North America, and I'm hoping that one day we will be able to see some change in that landscape. But for right now, unfortunately, we're here at a standstill. So I wanted to leave some time for questions here, but yes, I just wanted to leave this last point. Consensual sex work is not human trafficking. If you have one takeaway from this talk, hopefully that'll be one of them. But I did want to leave a little bit of time for questions. I know we have maybe a few minutes left. I'd love to hear if anyone had any curiosities. There's always usual questions about family and dating and stuff too, but whatever, every class is different, so I'm really curious to see what I'm going to be handed with today. And of course, if there are no questions, that's totally fine too. It was a lot of information that I was throwing out at you all that I'm sure you are all digesting as well. So but if anyone has any questions, feel free to hear. Grayson, what advice would you have for someone looking to enter the industry? Oh, yeah, that's a really great question, Grayson. I would definitely say, do your research. There are so many resources out there nowadays compared to when I was starting over a decade ago. It was still very like hush hush, like don't tell anyone, like very like gatekeepy. But now there are so many resources out there. There's Reddit, there's my podcast, there's be careful with TikTok. There's like a lot of sensationalized things on TikTok, but I would say, yeah, definitely do your research first, and just be mindful of, and be okay that, you might get doxxed in this industry. Your videos and clips might be posted all over the internet, and be okay with that potential happening, that people are going to find out, and how you might handle this situation. How would you handle, like, would that affect any of your current work, your relationships, your family? Because it definitely does have an effect, and it has had an impact on my past relationships, and has not made it easy. So I would definitely say, yeah, definitely ask yourself those questions. But talk to people. I would say, if you are looking at really getting some real perspective, talk to people that you might admire in the industry. A lot of us are really open to answering questions, and at least, well, I will say that I'm definitely open to answering questions for sure. And that's because I just don't want anything bad to happen. I would love for you to have like hopefully a nice entry point into the industry. And, I feel like a lot more people would be safer if they asked more questions and sought out mentorship. So that's kind of my advice for folks. Thanks for the question.
Jeff, I have a question that people
Sure.
sent me too, and it's about this issue of glamorization of the industry too.
Yes.
How do you walk that line, right, between wanting to show that this is work and we should be, valuing the individuals for the work that they do and the skills that they're developing and providing, and the services they're providing, but at the same time being cautious not to, glamorize what's, because it can be really, really difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Dangerous. So tell us a bit about that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's such a fine line with that too. I really am cognizant of how I'm communicating the work and how I'm portraying it. That's why I just love to talk about it really frankly, and also really be direct and open about, these are the pros, and the pros are, probably really obvious, and here are the, potential cons, and things that might make you uncomfortable, and things that might challenge you. And I really challenge people to really sit into that, because it does look nice and shiny, and I was definitely guilty of glamorizing a lot when I was a sugar baby. It was like the classic money shot on Instagram, and like, look how much money I made and all that stuff. But like, now that I'm a seasoned vet, I really am trying to not do that, just because so many people do that already, and it can be really dangerous, because there could be people like myself who are really green about the industry, and not even, just so naive going into it. I just don't, like, there could have been so many situations where a lot of bad situations could have happened, and I consider myself very lucky. So just being direct and open, I think, is the best way to do it, and really not to try to sugarcoat things very much. So yeah. Roxana, this might be too personal, but as a fellow Asian woman, I wonder how it's been for you as someone out in the public advocating for sex worker rights, considering Asian families who tend to be quite conservative when it comes to sex. Yes. Has it been really difficult with relationships with family members? Yes, of course. It's been very strange. And culturally, it's very different. We don't talk about sex. I never really had a great sex education growing up either. And it was just like one of those things you just never talked about. And That's still kind of a thing. And to be honest, I haven't really had outright conversations with my parents about the work that I do, even though I'm out here advocating loud and proud about it. I'm just like, well, you're also an adult. You could also choose to talk to me about it if you feel comfortable. But I'm also really prioritizing my relationships in terms of like, do they really need to know this? Is it going to damage these relationships? Is it going to have a trickle, like a domino effect, and cause those relationships to be in turmoil? I really don't think it's worth it in that case, and that's why I choose to keep it private-ish, but not really. As I mentioned, I'm very loud and proud about this. But yes, culturally, it can be very difficult for them to understand. Like I've mentioned earlier a story about my mom trying to teach her about it. I think it might also be a generational thing, but just having these open general conversations has at least, challenged her way of thinking, which, that's more than I can ask for. And, it's also, a place of privilege if you can just be out and have supportive parents and family that are just going to be like, oh my God, you're amazing. But for me, it's just a little bit too risky for myself. So, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. And especially in the advocacy space, Roxana, there's like not a lot of us out here. Usually the advocacy space, unfortunately, is quite white. And sometimes those experiences are not the same experiences I have had. So I'm really happy to bring a voice out there to advocate for, people of color, especially in the Asian community as well. Because, yeah, there's not a lot of us that can go out and be vocal about it. So thank you for the great questions, actually.
Deb, can you speak a little bit to the dating side of things? I know that's always a question that students are curious about. How do you balance that? And,
Of
what's
course.
it been like for you?
Yeah, dating in the beginning was so difficult. Like I remember I was talking about this recently, but I was in this weird pilot reality show on sugar babies a few years ago, and I remember that it went viral in Vancouver. Thank God you can't find it online. Don't even ask me. You cannot find it. Thank God. But I remember, receiving a text from a person I was dating for a few months, and he just broke up with me on the spot, saying our values didn't align. And I'm just like, okay, this is really unfair. And honestly, that was the first time I really felt stigmatized, that I really felt like I had done nothing wrong. And that crushed me for quite a long time and made me really hesitant to date, because there's a lot of like emotional labor that I have to do to educate people on the work that I do. And then you have people that like think, oh my God, it's so edgy, it's so cool, you're dating a stripper, blah blah blah, you're dating a sex worker. But they're more obsessed with that idea of it, and then they're actually really uncomfortable, and that projects. And then at the end of the day, they're not comfortable, then they try to control you and try to dictate what you can and cannot do. And I was like, this is my business unless you're going to be paying for me. Like, actually, that's not worth it. Even if you're paying for me, I'm just like, no. So dating has been, earlier has been challenging, but luckily I did find someone that I'm now married to. He's sitting in the other room, probably eavesdropping on this conversation, but who is able to really support the work that I do. And it was actually a client that I had met during the work, and that actually made things so much easier because we didn't have to have a real conversation about that, because he already knew and understood what I did and do. And he's like, oh yeah, get the bag, like go ahead, like, and like just is genuinely curious about like how my day-to-day is going in terms of like, how much money did you make today? Oh, and like tell me some crazy stories and stuff too. And it's fun. So, but it can be difficult for sure. And I definitely had my challenges with that. Any other questions? I know we're just a couple minutes over, but I just want to ensure that everyone is heard. But if not, then you're welcome to contact me on Instagram, on X as well. This is me on X. This is me on Instagram. But happy to answer any questions, especially if you don't want me answering them publicly here. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to chat with you in depth. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
No Well, thank you so much, Steph. It's always such a pleasure. And I'm so grateful, for you to just come out here and really explain some of these issues in a better format for sure than what we have in written form. And also to take up the space, which you deserve to take up. And so thank you. Thank you very much for coming in again.
Thank you. Until next time.
Right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
We will. And you've got some thank yous in the chat there for me too.
You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, music by Ted D, graphic design by Maria Bellandarama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.